Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Spirit Speaker KC podcast. I am medium Jamie Collins. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. I hope everyone has recovered from the Thanksgiving break and all the food and all of that good stuff. Um, I thought today I'd talk a little bit about which a topic that I have at times suffered with. Well, I wouldn't say all the time, but there's been a couple of times, especially I would say in the past couple of years. It's called mediumship burnout. Question mark. Is there a such thing as mediumship burnout? What exactly does it look like? What does it mean if you have mediumship burnout? And, I think we're all kind of familiar with burnout in many ways in life. It could be something at work, a hobby, just kind of when you're a little tired of something or a little bit stale. And so I thought today I would talk about mediumship burnout and what it may look like and some of the experience that I've had with it. As I said, especially in the past couple of years, how I had to rethink some things or kind of reinvent myself. And so I'd like to talk about that. And one of the things I'd like to say is, how do you know if you may be suffering from burnout? What may that look like? And what I'm going to do is just give you a little bit of my experience, how I noticed it, how it worked for me, and one of the ways that it affected me, or I thought that burnout might be coming about, is the number of readings that I was giving. You know, there is no right or wrong number in how many readings per week or per day that you should or should not be giving, because I'm a believer that it's going to be different for everyone. And I think if you're new to mediumship, you're just starting out, you may feel like you just want to give readings after readings after readings, and you're not understanding how much energy, how much work that it can take in giving readings. I think someone who's not experienced in mediumship and they're like, oh, you're just giving a 30-minute reading or an hour reading, it really shouldn't be that bad. And that may be the case. But if it's one day, if you're giving one 30-minute reading or 1 hour reading, but I really feel like one of the ways that it happened for me is that I had to scale back in the number of readings that I was giving. In the beginning of my mediumship, when I was first starting out, and I was really wanting to develop a client base, because remember I may have spoken about this in some other videos. When I first started out, I didn't have clients. I had to build this business. It wasn't something that, oh, I'm a medium and now people are knocking down my door for readings. It was really how I developed and got clients, was working the fair circuit, the metaphysical fairs or metaphysical expos. And that was a fantastic way for me to build clientele. And I tell any new developing medium who's ready to go professional, it's one of the best ways to develop and get clients. And for me, when I was just starting out, I was all excited and I'm like, oh, I could do this. And maybe in a weekend fair, I may give 40 or 50 or literally sometimes 60 readings in a Saturday or Sunday or a Friday, Saturday, Sunday fair, I was giving readings like you wouldn't believe. But what happens is when you're young, I think we all know this, you're young or not even really young, age has nothing to do with it. When you're just starting something and you're super excited and you just want to do it, you just want to do it all the time. And what I had noticed over the years is you have to learn how many readings per week, per day that you can do. Now, I have a 9 to 5, so I'm not a full time medium where I'm doing this all day, every day. I'm not doing that. And even then, I would only have certain amounts. So, one of the ways that you may notice some burnout is giving too many readings. That maybe a symptom of that burnout is you're not enjoying giving readings like you used to. And not because you're human and maybe you didn't get sleep last night or you're under the weather, you're not feeling the greatest. So, the number one way that I think you may notice mediumship burnout is you don't have that enjoyment of giving the readings like you normally do. You dread them, or you're saying, "Oh, I wish I didn't have a reading today." And I've experienced that, especially a couple of years ago. I would have those days that I would have a reading scheduled and I'd be like, man, I wish I didn't have a reading today. And so I had to learn over the years how to scale back. It used to be, even with a 9 to 5, I would look at about 2 readings per day, 5 to 6 days per week. So you're talking about potentially 10 to 12 readings per week. And that may not sound like a lot to some people, and it would depend on if that's a 30-minute or an hour session. And honestly, I used to not even offer 30-minute sessions. That was something that transpired, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. I'd have to look back in my scheduler to see. But it used to be I only offered hour sessions. I didn't even offer 30-minute sessions because what I found is people would get those 30-minute sessions and they'd be like, whoa, my session's over already. The 30-minute sessions go by really fast. I used to tell clients it's not because I'm trying to take your money or only hour or anything like that. They go by really fast. And what I found is a lot of clients were dissatisfied. But so it really depends on the number of readings. And so 10 to 12, and even then sometimes I'd be like, whoa, with life, a 9 to 5, and trying to give readings after work and all of this, it could be tough. So the number one way you may find out that you have mediumship burnout or reading burnout is you're just not enjoying giving the readings like you used to. Number two, another way of those burnout. Maybe you have found a staleness, a stagnation in your readings, in your sessions. You find that maybe you're not getting that clear connection with spirit. Maybe you have noticed that you're giving the same type of information in every reading. You're trying too hard. You're not letting spirit take control of the session or lead the session. You find that your readings just don't have that feeling of a really good session. And if you're a medium, and even a practicing medium, developing medium, we've all had that reading where we're like, ooh, that felt really good. This felt really good, or I got it. And so maybe you've noticed in your sessions, it's a little stale, repeated information. You're not getting the evidence that you've gotten before. So that's another way is assess your readings. And I don't care if you've been a medium for 6 months, a year, or 20 years, you should always be learning from your sessions. Every session that I have, afterwards I'm going back and I'm thinking about that session. What could I have done here? How could I have done this better? If I happen to record them, I will go back and listen to them. Okay, I could have done this better or could have done that better. So I'm all about going back and listening to those readings. So the number two way is you might notice some staleness, some stagnation. Your readings aren't up to par. They're not up to your standard of excellence. The third way that you may notice some mediumship burnout, you're not doing the things around mediumship that you normally would do. So for me, sometimes that may look like I'm not listening to mediumship or spirit based podcast. I'm not taking classes. I love to read about mediumship. Maybe I'm not reading about mediumship. In fact, it may be one of those things where if it's about mediumship, you're like, I don't want to hear anything about it. I need a break. So that may be another way. You're kind of stepping away and not you don't have the interest in mediumship that you used to have. It may be even talking to someone, a colleague who does the same thing as you do, and you're not talking about mediumship. So that's another way that you're like, maybe I'm suffering a little bit from burnout because you're really not even thinking about anything to do with mediumship. Okay, so that's that third way. You're avoiding it. Another way is this number four kind of ties in with number three. You start wanting to do other things besides mediumship. You start thinking, maybe I'll take a tarot class. Maybe I'll take an Akashic Records class. Maybe I'll take a Reiki class. And in and of itself, obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm always about if there's anything you can put in your toolbox, go for it. Go for it. But what I mean in this particular situation is it's not about your mediumship. It's about stepping away from it altogether. And yes, I do realize, as I said, there's nothing wrong with that. It might be spirit's way of guiding you into something else. Maybe in for years you've always wanted to take a tarot class and you never did, and now you're feeling that urge but to do that. So I get that. So I want to make that clear. I'm not saying this is a bad thing and that if you're a medium practicing mediumship, that's the only thing you can do. I don't want you to hear me on that standpoint because I think I've mentioned before, I've taken classes on different things. I've had Reiki classes and numerology classes and Akashic record classes. So I'm not saying none of that. This is truly about you're mostly a medium and you're kind of feeling that burnout. Okay. So we talked about it. So, number one, the enjoyment, that enjoyment of giving readings has kind of waned a little bit. You don't get excited about it. You're dreading it. Number two, you've noticed your readings are kind of stale. Okay, that they're kind of the same reel. You're on that hamster wheel. And third is you're not doing the things that you usually do about your mediumship. Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time throughout the year, I'm reading about mediumship. I'm in a class. I'm listening to mediumship podcast or other mediums. Um, I'm thinking about how I want to do, what changes, what things I want to do in my business, So at some time, I'm always doing something with mediumship because I'm basically a believer. You're always developing, you're always learning. There is no finish line of learning mediumship. I'm not the same medium I am today as I was 2 years ago or a year ago. I'm a believer that I am always learning. So, but you'll find that I know when I've had those stretches in the past, I don't want to hear a mediumship podcast. I'm not reading about it. Whatever it is, I'm kind of taking a back seat from it. And then lastly, you may want to do other things. You find yourself thinking about other things like, well, maybe this mediumship thing isn't for me. Maybe I'll take an Akashic Records class or Reiki or Tarot. And again, in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that. This is all about, could you be suffering from mediumship burnout? How, what are some ways that you can prevent this? Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about what I had to do for myself. And again, this is just my experience, it's not right or wrong. This is just my experience on how, maybe some tips on how to prevent burnout. The very first way I kind of mentioned a little earlier is about the number of readings. I looked back, I looked at my schedule, working a 9 to 5. I started to say, okay, I'm going to limit or downscale the number of readings I do per day or do per week. I just do it on a weekly basis more than a daily basis. So, I went from 10, 12, 15 readings per week to now I'm basically anywhere from about 5 to 7 readings per week. And that's just some weeks. So, to prevent burnout, it may be one of those things if you're in this boat where you're giving a lot of readings, this may be a time for you to scale back, especially if you're feeling burnout or you don't want to get to that burnout. How can you prevent that? Let's limit the number of readings. I've met people that, or even heard people say that they give 40, 50, 60 readings per week. And I'm like, no way. I don't care if you're doing this full time, you don't have a 9 to 5. You want me to believe that you're giving 40 to 50 readings per week and those are quality readings? I don't believe it. I don't. Now, people may in that 40 or 50 may be talking about 5 or 10 minutes on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever the social media thing is that people can do readings at. I don't believe it. I mean, I believe people are doing it. I don't understand how you can do 40, 50, 60 readings per week. I don't care if they're just 10 minutes long and those be quality readings. So, again, not saying it's not possible. I'm a little bit of a skeptic around that. I would just say if you feel like you're not enjoying your readings or you're dreading your readings, maybe you need to downscale. And that's what I've started doing. I just simply don't do as many readings in a week that I used to do. That works for me. And I have found that the quality of those readings are back. I'm enjoying it more. I'm looking forward to those sessions because I'm not doing 15 a week or 20 a week and then just think about if you're doing 10 or 15 a week and you're working a metaphysical event, that's even more. So, I know after a metaphysical event, sometimes I'll take a week off or at least 3 or 4 days off just because you're exhausted. So, scale back your readings. If you want to, that's one of the ways I'll say maybe you can prevent burnout is look at your schedule. Are you doing too many readings? Another way, another tip to prevent burnout, if you find yourself that maybe you're getting some burnout there, or find something to freshen up your mediumship. Try something different in your mediumship. Now, there are a lot of old school traditional mediums out there that don't believe in trying different things or thinking outside the box. And what do I mean by that? For instance, one of the things I've decided in 2026 to kind of try something different, be a little progressive in my mediumship, is to include tarot cards. Now, it isn't a tarot reading, it's still mediumship. I'll give my mediumship reading. And then at the end, when I'm having feedback with my client, and if they have any questions about anything that maybe isn't mediumship related, like I've just given a reading and I brought through their dad, but maybe they have a question about their career. What I will do is then pull a card, tarot card, or cards, whatever I'm feeling at that moment, and using some of that intuition along with that mediumship. Yes, I've had plenty of videos where I talk about when a client sits down with me, I never know if it's going to be mediumship or intuitive. I'm one of those mediums that when you sit with me, I never know. You could sit down with me and it's a mediumship reading. You could sit down with me and it's an intuitive session. I never know until I open up. But one of the things that I think can also help prevent burnout is to try something different. I've read about mediums who use astrology. They will ask their client for their date of birth, and use astrology in some way. I know some who have used numerology. And so I'm not totally against that. I say, hey, whatever that you can have to freshen up your mediumship or so it doesn't get stale, try it. And I'm going to try that going forward, is to try the tarot cards. And I will, in future episodes, let you know how that's going. And I'm doing that. I've almost been doing this for almost 15 years. And I kind of just want to try something different. I want to change up just to see, just to see. And I have a mentor who suggested it to me. One of my very first mentors suggested it to me. She says, "Hey, Jamie, are you using tarot cards?" I'm like, no. And she was like, "Why not?" And I was like, well, okay, there's really not a good reason. I couldn't think of one. And, I just feel like sometimes those are nuggets that spirit may be giving. Like, it took my mentor to drop that to me. And maybe that's a message from my guides. Maybe that's a message from those in spirit that say, hey, maybe things are a little stale. Let's add a little excitement to your mediumship sessions and let's do tarot cards. So I'm going to try that. So try to find something if you're feeling that burnout or a little stale. Try something to freshen up your mediumship. Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone, because I can tell you, tarot cards are outside of my comfort zone. I'm not a tarot reader whatsoever. I know just a little bit to be dangerous, but I'm willing to learn and try. It might change everything. Who knows? I won't know until I try. Another thing that may help prevent burnout that I've also, for myself, um, have decided is take time off. Don't be afraid to take time off, to step away. And again, I think it goes back to sometimes we get so excited. We love working with spirit and we want to go, 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 go. And sometimes it's okay to take time off. I'll never forget. I have a friend in the St. Louis area. And 3 or 4 years ago, she was telling me, you know what, Jamie? I take the last week of the month off. She's in the metaphysical community, not a medium. She does other work, healing work. And she goes, you know what? I work hard for 3 weeks and I always take the last week of a month off. And she goes, you might want to think about that. And it really, again, gave me pause because I would work, work, work all the weeks, all the weekends. I was always working. I enjoyed it, but I did begin to feel some of that burnout or like, oh, I got readings today. Oh my gosh. And I thought, wow, I never really thought about taking a week off. You do take a day or so here, and I've even started incorporating that sometimes. Now, I don't take a week off every month, but there will be some months I'll say, you know what? I'm not doing any readings this week. I'm going to block my calendar out and I'm not going to do any readings. And so I say to you, you know, that's another way to maybe prevent burnout is don't be afraid to take some time off. I think sometimes we can get so wrapped up in our work, whether it's spiritual work or any other work. I don't care if you're an attorney, a doctor, a nurse, business person. We get so wrapped up, you know, that we don't think about that self-care. And so that's another thing that I started doing. I heeded the advice of this friend that, hey, it's okay to step away. So, I'll take time off around the holidays. December, I'll take a couple of weeks off. Maybe in the summer, I don't allow myself anymore to to really be afraid or not want to give readings, to take some of that time off. I believe spirit understands that we need that self-care that we always hear about. And if we're constantly on the go, we won't do that. So I've really done that over the past couple years where I will step away and take a week off or a couple of weeks off. Or even if I don't want to take weeks off, I'll just say, okay, this week instead of 5, 6 readings, I'll do 2, you know, and that gives me those intermittent days in there. I'll read for a couple days that week, but then the rest of the week I'm off. So you have to do what will work for you. But burnout is real. I don't care what profession you're in, it's real. And these are just some of the ways that I think it can help you prevent that burnout by not being afraid to take some time off, not being afraid to freshen up your mediumship or try something different. You may try something and you're like, nah, that doesn't work. I may try tarot cards and go, you know what? It was a great suggestion by my mentor, but that's not really for me. But again, I won't know until I try. So freshen up whatever it is that you do. It may not be mediumship, you may be Reiki or a tarot reader or whatever. Try to find some way to freshen up your mediumship. And another way is just limit the number of readings or the number of sessions that you're doing. And I feel like if we do that, that self care, and that goes back to a little bit about what I mentioned earlier. It may be time to take another class. If you're a Reiki person or energy healer or Akashic Records or medium, hey, who says you can't take another class and learn something? As I say, that's just another tool in your toolbox. I know a little bit about some of the other things. Like I said, I've taken Akashic Records and numerology. Those things interest me, and I always encourage my students to try other things. And most of them have heard me say over and over again, it's like when you go to an all you can eat buffet, and you're trying a little of this, you're trying a little of that, and what you like and what you don't like. I truly agree with that in my spiritual journey as well, that I'm going to try different things. My mentor encouraged me that way to try different things, and some things you're going to like, and some things you're not going to like. So don't be afraid to venture out. Especially, this may be more for those practitioners, readers who have been doing this for a while and maybe haven't thought about, am I suffering from burnout and I don't know it? And you may want to look back. And it's also for those developing mediums to say, hey, okay, I know I'm all excited in this and I'd love to do 20 readings a week, but I'm only going to do 10 a week or whatever it may be. So I hope some of this helped you out with mediumship. And I thought I would bring that up because it was one of the things that I was suffering with a couple of years ago. And I really got a handle on it now. And what helped me was lessening the number of readings that I do. Doing other things even helped me. Remember when I said trying new things like tarot or Akashic records? Well, what I did is, I started a development circle. I began to teach classes, so it was still with mediumship, but it was something different, and it wasn't readings, readings, readings all the time. I got to do that development circle. I got to teach classes in addition to the fair. So I felt like I was having a mixture of things and I wasn't getting so burnt out in readings. I hope that made sense. I hope it helps you, or at least gives you some things to think about. And I think this is for all levels of development, even if you're at that beginning stage. It's just always something to keep in the back of your mind in case you ever feel yourself dreading those readings or feeling like you're doing too much. I always say, do you? No two people are alike. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. So I'm never one of the cookie cutter approach. Do what works for you. Thank you. I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you being here. And don't forget to go to my YouTube channel, Spirit Speaker KC. Also on Spotify, please subscribe. Let friends know if you have any questions about anything or any topics. Let me know. I thank you so much, and I will see you next time.